Robin Williams playing around with Flubber. He makes Flubber into like a cream and rubs it on his balls. And by balls, I mean a golf ball and a bowling ball.
So first off, Brainerd's just sending bouncy bowling balls into the neighborhood. It's just flying around.
He knows this is dangerous, and he says, I'm going to put it on a bowling ball. Basically make a bouncy ball version of a cannon.
A weapon.
It's Flubber!
What's poppin', my popcorn buddies? We are back with another episode of Just Play It. This is our penultimate episode of Season 1, by the way.
Ooh.
I am your host, James. Sitting across the virtual table from me is my best friend in the world, Nick.
Howdy, folks.
Flopbuster. Time to flop. Worse than LeBron James.
It's flop time!
Whoa!
We got another entry into our Flopbuster series. Nick, what are we watching this week?
This week, we are getting into what I would consider an unfortunate flop, because this is similar to how Free Willy was a childhood staple of ours. This was also a childhood staple of mine. We are reviewing 1997's Flubber.
Flubber, baby. Yeah, I was shocked that this was a flop by our very high IQ mathematical standards. For new listeners, or as a reminder, across the 5 ratings that we go over at the end of the episode, which is Fan, Critic, Rotten Tomatoes, Metacritic, and the IMDb score, we take those average ratings, and if it's below 40%, then it's a flop in our eyes, to our standards. And I am shocked that this one is a flop at 39.8%. It just barely missed it.
Wow.
Barely missed it.
Yeah, we'll look into what the other guys are saying, after our plot talk, as we normally do. But, man, not to, bust a nut too early, but the critics really did not like this.
Whenever we do a flop bustin' episodes, spoiler alert, the ratings are not good. That's where we come in. We're going to be the flop busters, and we're going to dive into this movie and decide if it really did deserve to flop. And based on our negotiations from our first flop of My Brother the Pig, it needs at least a 5.5. And now, is that a 5.5 on average from us, or is that a 5.5 minimum from both of us?
I think it has to be average.
Okay, so
that's what the pod is deciding. Just Play It pod needs to decide it. And so that takes both of us, my friend, 2 to tango.
Unfortunately, that means My Brother the Pig, our first and only split under 5.5 rating, over 5.5 rating. It's a 5, unfortunately. My Brother the Pig deserved a flop. Pluto Nash, we were on the same freaking page. We were like, throw this movie in the garbage and don't let it ever see the light of day.
Yeah, just like Randy Quaid's career.
Hiding out in Canadian hotels, per usual.
That's what that movie should do. But let's look at Flubber, 1997, kids movie, family-friendly kind of comedy. It stars Robin Williams, so you kind of know what you're going to get.
Great
We're directed by Les Mayfield.
Did you look at any of Les Mayfield's work?
I did, directed Encino Man, if that gives you any insight into how he does things. Not an illustrious directing career or producing career, to be honest.
Oh, dude, he directed Back to the Future, The Ride.
Yeah, so that's what he's doing. You got to think. So, looking at some of his credits, right?
I only recognize Blue Streak and Miracle on 34th
Blue
Street.
To be honest with you,
Blue Streak was with Martin Lawrence, and he's like a cop, funny guy. Oh, a former convict poses as a cop to retrieve a diamond he stole years ago. Yeah, good old shenanigans. That was on Comedy Central all the time. Yeah, not a lot here. But anyway, who's in this movie?
Yeah, like I said before, we have Robin Williams, Marcia Gay Harden, and Christopher McDonald are kind of your top 3 build there. Christopher McDonald, for those who need, you're like, I know the name, can't picture the face. It's Shooter McGavin from Happy Gilmore.
More like, I recognize the face, don't know the name. Whenever you see this fool show up in a movie, he always plays a douchebag.
over the top, like over the top douchebag.
He's so good at it though.
The funny thing about Christopher McDonald, if you know the movie Happy Gilmore, you'll know he's Shooter McGavin, and he's actually a big golf fan, loves golfing, and is a fan of going to PGA Tour events. He basically takes on the persona of Shooter McGavin whenever he attends a golf event. So he'll like the other golfers, professional golfers, will go talk to him because they've all seen Happy Gilmore. They know that Shooter McGavin, and he'll talk to them as Shooter, like, it wasn't quite me at the '98 Open, but keep trying, little man. Stuff like that. Just takes on the persona, really basks in it. So quite a character, Christopher McDonald. There's also quite a few other folks, and we'll call them out as we get there. There's a lot of, I won't call them cameos, but definitely a lot of people that just pop up in the movie, and you go, from 1997, there's some faces, some younger faces of people that I remember. So
can't wait to get there.
Let's look at the how it did at the box office. So I was surprised to read this. $80 million budget coming from Disney. In 1997, $80 million. Holy smokes. We'll talk later about what a lot of that was used for. I think the CGI and effects, and we'll talk about whether it paid off, if this holds up, as we always do with CGI. But on that $80 million budget, we're talking a return of $178 million box office.
That's more than twice the money.
This movie was, You're also talking Robin Williams at the height of his powers. 97 Robin Williams.
Right.
Holy smokes. Well, let's get into the log line for Flubber. An absent-minded professor discovers, quote, Flubber, a rubber-like super bouncy substance.
Now, the interesting thing about this log line is when I was researching the movie, I was going through YouTube videos or articles, and the term absent-minded professor kept popping up. So when I saw this on the log line again, I decided to Google it. And I don't know if you know this, Nick, but this is a remake of a movie.
I know it's based off a story. Like, this isn't an original story.
So there's a 1961 movie called The Absent-Minded Professor. And I kid you not, this is a straight up remake.
Shot for shot?
Not shot for shot, but there's a professor in the little trailer I saw. He has something written down like, don't forget 8:30 wedding, which happens in this movie. And he makes a bouncy substance that's like anti-gravity. He uses it in a basketball game for a school, and he has a flying car. And I thought, wow, this is straight up remaking this movie.
Yeah.
Except they call it Flubber. And when we get into our plot talk, we'll discover how much they do focus on the gags and the shticks of the Flubber character, because the Flubber is pretty much a featured character in this movie. Whereas in The Absent-Minded Professor, having never seen it, I can only imagine it was merely an object in the movie that was used as a science fiction device to make fantastical things happen. But I was shocked how much similarities there were. Even the professor's last name, at least, Brainerd, is the same. So this is a remake. I didn't know this.
I just looked it up, and The Absent-Minded Professor is a Disney property.
Right. No, exactly. So Disney remade it. They still do that today.
Disney's been doing this forever. This is their.
They love remaking stuff. So that was interesting. The next point I want to bring up, 2 out of 3 here before we dive into the movie. Looking at the credits in the beginning, I don't know if you noticed John Hughes, who directed all of those 80s iconic teen movies, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, Breakfast Club, 16 Candles, producer, writer on this movie.
Interesting. Okay.
Diving into his IMDb page, it kind of makes sense because I don't want to say he transitioned, but he definitely got a little bit more into writing and producing 90s Disney movies, because he was the writer on Home Alone. And when I was watching this movie, I was thinking, gosh, this is reminding me so much of Home Alone with the goons and the injuries. and stuff like that. I was like, it's very slapsticky and Home Alone-esque. So I thought that was interesting. I had to look it up. I was like, is there a different John Hughes? But no, it was the John Hughes.
The one and only.
Last interesting point, on the post side of credits, on the rolling credits, I saw science consultant Bill Nye. So apparently Bill Nye was the technical advisor for the science elements in this movie. And I just want you to keep that in mind as we go through this movie, which is about science, but it has a lot of just bonkers stuff that happens in it.
Okay.
So with that, let's flub on over to plot talk. But before we get to plot talk, Nick, do you have anything else you need to say?
I'm ready.
I mean, anything you need to say to me.
I'm ready.
Nick, don't let me catch you in 4K. About to catch you so bad.
I know what you want. I know what you want, buddy.
What am I going to say?
I'm not giving it to you. I'm not giving it to you. Happy birthday, baby.
This guy forgot my birthday. Caught in 4K once again. Except I got you on recording.
It has been a day. It has been a day.
I'll be honest, Nick. I woke up this morning and completely forgot it was my birthday. We have busy lives. We're both in the midst of planning a wedding. I'm sure our fiancés are doing all the heavy lifting for planning our weddings, but we're doing some things on our end.
Still a lot going on.
Whenever this episode comes out, it's not my birthday. Just at the time of recording, it's my birthday. But let the jury know that I barely recognize today as my birthday because we're so busy these days. Weddings, podcasts, just trying to keep the lights on. It's a whole deal.
It do be that way.
Nick, do you want to move us to the next section of our episode?
I would love to, because I think it is time for plot
talk.
Plot talk.
All right, so off the rip, we are introduced to Professor Philip Brainerd, a mad scientist and inventor of wacky stuff. There's everything, none of his inventions are polished. They're all pretty rough. They're just machines, devices, a bunch of crazy things. Pretty much starts out with him getting woken up by an alarm clock, hits the alarm clock, and then he yeets a trash can out to
I was going to say, I think the clock vibrates off the bedside table, but why is the trash can yeet button on the bedside table where the alarm would be? That seems very impractical.
He's wacky. He's a wacky man.
There's just a big red button. He just smacks it. And for no reason at all, the outside trash can rockets up into the sky and comes crashing down into the earth. This is a part one of the reasons why his neighbors probably want him removed from the neighborhood.
I can think of about 20 reasons that we'll find out during this film.
Well, that's just the first one. Danny Elfman is on the track. He did the music for this.
Friend of the show.
I think this is our first repeating composer. He obviously did the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movies. He did American Hustle, Nightmare Before Christmas, Wednesday. I believe we covered this in a previous episode because, of course, he composed
Hulk.
2003's Hulk. This is actually in between his work on Men in Black and Good Will Hunting. And I do want to point out a special credit I saw in the introductory title credits. Specifically, it says Flubber Mambo by Danny Elfman. And then it says music by Danny Elfman. So I thought that was interesting. They really wanted to put the importance and spotlight on the Flubber Mambo song first before they gave this man his credit for the entire point of why he was hired for this movie.
Just the Flubber Mambo.
So if you never saw this movie before, you're just like, okay, I guess Flubber Mambo's coming up on the soundtrack, and I better look out for it.
Get ready. We're also introduced to, how do you want to refer to him in this podcast? Brainerd, Philip?
Brainerd.
I'll say Brainerd.
Professor Brainerd.
Yeah, so we're introduced to Brainerd's, basically his key invention, which is Weibo, which is a floating companion / assistant. Is very advanced, is very almost has human emotions, human thoughts. It's basically a person in a robot. It floats around. It's actually a pretty genius character.
I was going to say it reminded me of Bumblebee a lot. One, because she's yellow And 2, she throws up a lot of videos that evoke the tone and emotion that she's trying to convey. Like she'll reference and a lot of it was Disney property stuff. She would throw up like old Donald Duck cartoons, old Goofy cartoons, The Simpsons I saw on there. Kind of just like a little extra flair. But I don't know. Did Michael Bay steal that from Flubber for Bumblebee?
Obviously.
Because Bumblebee does use a lot of songs to communicate because his voice box is broken in the first movie.
I mean, there's no doubt in my mind that this is where Michael Bay got the inspiration.
Heavily plagiarized.
Weibo also has a voiced by Jodie Benson, who is the Little Mermaid, the animated Little Mermaid.
OG Little Mermaid, correct.
So we get our introduction to her, and we already find out pretty early that this robot is a little bit off and jealous. This robot is in love with Brainerd.
If this was a thriller drama, this would be scary.
Yes. So right off the bat, Weibo keeps his schedule. She deletes Brainerd's wedding off of his schedule.
Well, she kind of hides it because he has a bunch of stuff on his schedule and he's like, oh, what am I supposed to be remembering today? And she's like, oh, I don't know. And then when he looks away, she purposely flashes it like, oh, I'm showing you technically the wedding's on the schedule, but as soon as you look up, I'm going to take it away. So you're thinking Weibo's a little sketchy.
Weibo is sketchy, but likable.
Not completely psychotic. But Brainerd, he's like the OG Tony Stark. He's got all these robots making his breakfast. He's got a robot assistant that he can communicate with and be sane with because he lives alone and he lives a scattered, messy life. But he apparently has a fiance.
Yeah, he has his fiance. And we also find out that his current passion, so we just get everything laid out in the first 5 minutes of the movie. Brainerd's, the main rub of the movie is that he works at a college, he's a professor, and the college is about to be bought out or is about to go under.
And they do that in such classic 90s style with opening on a newspaper kid on his bicycle throwing newspapers to houses. And the article says, what's the guy's name? Heckner?
Yeah.
Like one of the antagonists. It says Heckner threatens to shut the school down or something. So we get that right off the bat. Like first 10 seconds of the movie.
Yeah, here's our problem that needs to be solved. What we have is Brainerd needing to, or his idea to save the school is to create this new source of energy.
Again, like Tony Stark.
So he's this professor, he's crazy, he's wacky, he's inventor. Yeah, he's like, if I can do this, then I can save the school. So we don't quite know how, but we're introduced to this plot point really early on. And the next scene we get to is him going into the classroom, and we meet his fiance, Sarah Reynolds, Marcia Gay Harden, and she is the principal, dean, president.
Something like that. I think she runs the college.
And we find out that Brainerd has already missed 2 wedding dates.
Okay.
He has left her at the altar twice at this point because because of his eccentric behavior. So he's so genius that he forgets everything. He's so scattered. He can't remember where he put stuff, what was said to him, what day it is, what's his, he's wacky.
Complete scientific genius, but social cues, remembering daily things to do, useless. When I heard this, because in the scene, Marcia Gay Harden, she is getting her wedding dress hemmed or altered in her office by her friends, or she's trying it on, and she says, "Oh, once is forgivable, twice is okay, but 3 times if he does it again, then I'll really be mad." I was like, this dude 2 times? Okay, like I said in the beginning, we're planning weddings currently. That's the main focal point of our to-do list. And this dude, I mean, they are only getting married in a church. I don't think that's really expensive, but still, you're probably paying money to the church 3 times. Unless they were cool and just kind of forwarded the credit to the next wedding. But I was like, that's super rude. So watching this as an
Yeah.
adult, I thought, wow, that is appalling and
What an
unforgivable.
irresponsible human being.
Well, maybe watching it as a kid, I thought, oh, that must happen all the time. I guess people just forget weddings. It's just like, oh, I forgot to go to that board meeting.
Maybe.
Because as a kid, it didn't really register as a big deal. I was like, okay, that sucks, whatever. But as an adult, I'm like, what an asshole.
Just bad.
Yeah.
This woman should not be with him.
And don't be a pushover.
So we get to the day of the third attempted wedding here. Brainerd's in his classroom, and he is approached by his former partner, Wilson Croft, played by Christopher McDonald,
Yay.
who he just admits that he profited off of all of Brainerd's ideas and inventions and formulas.
It really reminded me of the Breaking Bad relationship with Walter White, and I think the character's name is Elliot. Walter White stuck around, and he was the smarter of the two.
Yeah.
And was the professor and stayed in school, stayed teaching. And then his business partner went off to essentially capitalize off both of their hard work and research and became a very successful business owner. But that's where the similarities between Flubber and Breaking Bad stop.
Former partners, and one's a chemist. I mean, that's
Chris McDonald. He just lays it all out there. I see you have a note about how forward he was with his main mission in this movie.
Yeah, he basically tells Brainerd, you're going to miss your wedding because that's what you do, because you're forgetful and you're an asshole.
By the way, the wedding is today in the movie.
It's like in 3 hours.
And at this point, Professor Brainerd has met up with Sarah, and Sarah has said, are you ready for our wedding? And he's like, yeah. And she says, it's today. And he says, today. Yes. Okay. Yeah. Today. And she's like, seriously, it's today. Literally. Do not
This
forget.
guy does not care about getting married to you, Sarah.
Obviously. So that already happened. And then now Chris McDonald comes in and says, well, to be quite frank, I'm here to steal your fiance and make her my wife. And you're like, wow, that was really honest.
Yeah, it was really honest. I also like how in his scenario, Sarah has zero say in this. It's like, you're not going to show up, and then I'm going to have her as my wife.
Yeah.
Like that.
Very medieval.
Yeah, that's odd.
And he openly says, I'll admit, I'm petty. I'm corrupt. And essentially that he's jealous of Philip's brain. But I got, at least he's honest. You can't really be mad at Wilson Croft because he's laying it all out there, his big master plan. So if Professor Brainerd drops the ball, that's on him.
Yeah, what's at stake, Brainerd. This guy's coming in, Mr. Steal Yo Girls over here.
It's weird writing.
Very predictably, Brainerd is getting ready for the wedding, putting on his bow tie, getting everything ready, and he's talking to Weibo, and all of a sudden he has this scientific breakthrough in his head about how to make this energy project that's going to save the school, how he's going to make it work. And so he gets distracted and he goes down to his basement where he has this full chemistry lab down there. That can't be safe. I don't think that's allowed to have that many chemicals in a basement. He has to have special permission from the city.
Oh, I'm sure he has asked for zero permission to do this. He takes science and life he takes the neighborhood into his own hands.
So he goes through the whole rigmarole of getting his experiment ready, everything, and he fires it up, turns on whatever machine, and it blows up his house.
Well, I think it definitely blows up the lab. It's very crispy and ashy in there.
Blows out the windows.
It does blow out the windows.
You get the outside view of just
going back to the absent-minded professor. Watching clips of that on YouTube very quickly, there are little gaggy shticks like that I saw where stuff like smoke blows out the window. So I think they were trying to pay an homage to that, but it's different on a old timey black and white movie, very I Love Lucy, over the top stunts and visual effects. But in modern days, you're like, holy shit, he died.
Yeah.
He died in a lab explosion. No one could survive that. In Technicolor times, you're thinking this dude's so injured.
But it's the 90s thing of once you see him after the explosion, his face is all black and his hair's all blown back and he's just kind of crispy and he just wipes off his glasses.
And he goes, "Oh, what a bang."
There's so many just slapsticky moments.
Robin Williams.
It's Robin Williams.
Yeah. So we learn by now that Brainerd is essentially an imbecile, and any rational viewer would have no sympathy for this character.
None.
They would say this guy is reckless, he's dangerous, and he's forgotten his own wedding twice, and he's about to do it for a third time. Which is why I think they needed to make Chris McDonald's character such an obvious tool. To be like, hey, all you rational people, Brainerd is acting like inconsiderate, regardless of human life person who forgets his own wedding, forgets the love of his life's most important day. But we need to lay it out there that Wilson Croft is the real bad guy here. Kind of dropped the ball on the introductory character development there for me.
I agree with that. He is hard to love character. And that's why the villains are so over the top.
But anyway, the lab's all crispy except for this one metal chamber, which looks like it is frozen over. It's the only thing that is not crispy. Flubber pops out. Or at least this sentient green goo.
Yeah, I don't... That's the best way to describe it. It looks sentient. It responds to... It mimics what Brainerd's doing. We're going to have questions about this. We will put this into talking points. We don't quite know what Flubber is, but it has a crazy amount of elasticity and kinetic energy, and it bounces around all over the place. Brainerd takes a picture of it, and the flash makes it go insane, and it starts just destroying the whole neighborhood.
It starts bouncing through different houses. There's a shot where like a lady is walking with laundry down the hallway, and it's focused on her like up and down butt cheeks, and Flubber recreates it with his own anatomy, but he's floating in the air, and I'm like, how is this happen? How does this work?
It just defies gravity. He does a lot of floating.
Just disobeys the laws of physics in general. But that's not the shocking part to me. As a kid, you're thinking, oh, this is awesome. This is so funny. But as an adult, you're like, one, how is it doing this physically? And two, why is it so sentient? It's way too sentient off the rip.
After being just created, yeah.
It pretty much comes out like AI.
This thing has its own brain and just understands the world.
It has logs of memories of human culture because during this neighborhood bounce around scene, it draws the Mona Lisa. I'm like, how did it know what the Mona Lisa looked like?
And put a mustache on it. So it's a character.
And put a mustache on it. Brainerd does the shave and a haircut 2 bits melody, but like as a raspberry. He's like, and then Flubber goes, you're like, I would be like, kill this thing. Kill this thing, it knows too much.
Lock it away.
Yeah.
Lock it
Put it back in the chamber and blow that up. Because why does it know that?
That's a good point.
Yeah, so it's just way too sentient off the rip. But I gotta say, I think we both had similar thoughts here on our notes. CGI, not mad at it.
Really good.
Not mad at it.
Really good. I would accept it in a movie made today.
Held up great. 6 years later, 2003's Hulk couldn't do it. Both green characters. What went wrong?
$80 million of Disney money, man. Once the Hulk got his Disney money, he started looking good.
Weibo classifies this substance as flying rubber, which sparks a idea in Brainerd's mind to call it Flubber. More like Flopper, am I right? Because this movie flopped.
Hey.
Or would it be Flupper?
Flooper?
Flubber flops at the box office. Brainerd actually catches this with an old school catcher's mitt. It's flying around in the mitt. Like, it's uncontrollable how much energy this thing possesses. So this thing is dangerous and has a high IQ brain.
And he locks it away with some, like, radioactive stuff. I'm like, why does this guy have radioactive particles in his home? This guy's a domestic terrorist.
He's pretty much like Rick Sanchez or Doc Brown.
Very Rick Sanchez.
Why do these two eccentric professors have access to plutonium?
I'd love to know.
Why? Brainerd continues to work on Flubber into the early morning, and his incorrectly set alarm goes off at 6:30, And Weibo informs him, hey, it's not 6:30 p.m. on a Friday.
And good old Weibo, when he decided to start working on Flubber, Weibo basically pushed him to do it. Like, oh yeah, this is important. Like, we're not going to your wedding.
Because Weibo's secretly in love with Brainerd.
Which is dangerous.
And at the wedding scene, Sarah's left at the altar and Wilson Croft, Chris McDonald, is pouring out the rice that they usually throw. And he's just got the biggest shit-eating grin on his face. Like such a Shooter McGavin look, dude.
He plays the part so well.
He's so good.
Brainerd, not realizing social cues or that Sarah might be mad at him, goes to Sarah's office and attempts to explain the situation.
I was like, damn, dude, that is bold.
He just shows up and she's like, I don't want to talk to you. And he's like, no, let me explain everything. It's like, dude. He's trying to explain Flubber to her. Flubber is not really impressing Sarah whatsoever.
Dude, 3 times. 3 times you missed me. And you're walking in with green goo.
He tries to show off Flubber by putting Flubber in his back pocket, and he's going to fall backwards out of like a 3rd-story window, and Flubber will bounce him back up, right? Again, this guy doesn't really understand Flubber at all. He just created it maybe 6 hours ago.
Bodily harm is a major concern and motif in this movie.
So he falls backwards out the window. Shocker, Flubber doesn't bounce. He just smacks his back onto the grass.
Flubber doesn't bounce because it randomly decides to rocket out of his pocket and blow a hole in the back pocket and just leave the situation.
Flubber gone. Flubber wants nothing to do with this.
Yeah, so meanwhile, Brainerd's got a fractured tailbone and a broken spine.
And then we are introduced to the next baddie of the movie. Medfield College, which is the college that Brainerd is a professor at. They have the main sponsor, a big donor, Chester. What was his last name, James? How do you say it?
Well, it's spelled Honecker?
Yeah, Chester is disappointed because Brainerd failed his son in chemistry class. And so that night, he sends his goons over to Brainerd's house, Smith and Wesson. Nice. Great job, everybody.
I didn't even know those are character names.
Nice and creative. To Brainerd's house in an attempt to persuade Brainerd into giving Bennett a better grade. So he's like, my son didn't pass his class, so I'm going to go send my goons to rough up his chemistry professor so that he'll pass him.
It really reminded me of a parody of Spider-Man and Harry and Norman Osborn. Like the house, like Will Wheaton, the son, who is a whiny little bitch, and is like, they kicked me off the basketball team because I failed my chemistry class. He was obviously Harry Osborn. Chester gave me big Norman Osborn vibes. And Danny Elfman on the track really kind of resonated with me. I was like, I'm getting some weird similarities with the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man.
We got Breaking Bad. We got Spider-Man. We got Bumblebee. Dude, Flubber inspired so much greatness.
But to talk about these goons real quick, once again...
Dude, right away, I got these guys.
Oh, really?
Oh, absolutely. They're two of my favorite characters here.
Oh, okay. Well, I was going to say for one of them, I recognized from only one project. That would be Ted Levine.
Yep.
Plays Wesson. I recognized him as the main detective police sergeant from the original
Captain Leland Stottlemyre
from Fast and Furious.
Oh.
Yeah. No, what are you talking about?
He is Captain Leland Stottlemyre in one of my favorite TV series of all times, Monk.
I never watched Monk.
Highly recommend Monk. Great show. And he is Captain Leland Stottlemyre. He is the police captain.
Yeah, this guy's known for The Silence of the Lambs, Heat, Shutter Island, and Wild Wild West, funny enough. But the two projects that we know him from, he doesn't pop up.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is Captain Leland Stottlemyre all the way. That's my man right there.
He was in one Fast and Furious movie. It was really the voice that I recognized him.
Yeah, kind of that low, slow draw almost.
But the other guy...
Oh, this guy.
Do you recognize Clancy Brown?
Absolutely.
Because I was looking at this guy. I feel like I know who this is. Not really.
I know the voice acting credit you're going to bring up, and I know his movies.
Dude, talk about adding friends to the show. Clancy frickin' Brown, dude. Like, we need to add this guy to our top friends list. Because he has been in 300 things. Name something, he's been in it. So he was just recently in John Wick 4. He was in Shawshank Redemption.
He's Captain Hadley in Shawshank Redemption, which I believe is a top 5 greatest movie of all time.
Boom. Looking for this? I actually do recall his character in the show Lost. He was only in a few episodes of one season, I believe. Funny enough, related to this podcast, he does voice John Anderton in the Minority Report PlayStation 2 game.
Ooh.
So shout out to our old episode of Minority Report. I saw this and I was very tickled by it. He plays Savage Opress in Star Wars Clone Wars.
Very cool.
But I thought that was sick. Another cool one I saw was he plays Surtur in Thor Ragnarok, which is the large lava devil monster that ends up destroying Asgard. And then speaking of major universes, this guy also plays a character of Berg in The Mandalorian. So in season 1 episode, The Prisoner, the one with Bill Burr.
Yeah.
Again, he's like a big horned kind of devil looking guy under prosthetics. So that's Clancy Brown underneath that. He does a lot of voice acting credits. I was tickled to see him as Dr. Neo Cortex in not the original Crash Bandicoot, but from Crash Bandicoot 2 to like Crash Nitro Kart, he was the voice of Dr. Neo Cortex. But the longest running, most successful credit this man has to his name is
Mr. Krabs.
From SpongeBob.
He is Mr. Krabs.
He has been Mr. Krabs from the jump, from season 1 to the current season, to the movies, to the video games. Clancy Brown is Mr. Krabs. Holy crap, this guy's awesome.
And you forgot one of my favorite ones. He's Sergeant Zim in Starship Troopers as well.
Yes. Dude, there was too much to write down. There's too much to write down.
He's been everywhere. The second these guys showed up on screen, I was just tickled. I love both of these guys.
Dude.
So Clancy Brown, Ted Levine.
We love these goons.
Big fan of them both.
But they only play goons in this movie. They get home alone during this science experiment scene with Robin Williams playing around with Flubber. He makes Flubber into like a cream and rubs it on his balls. And by balls, I mean a golf ball and a bowling ball.
It's also a spray from a spray bottle.
Yeah, he makes it into a cream and into a spray. And I thought this guy already mastered Flubber.
Yeah.
He has changed the compound. He has changed the matter. He's a Flubber master. He says, every time it hits a surface, the kinetic energy increases. A blunt object that can uncontrollably bounce around.
A weapon.
And who gets smacked in the head by these weapons?
The goons.
Some of our favorite actors ever. They get done dirty. This is the first feelings of Home Alone that I experienced, because it's just like the two thieves in the Home Alone movie that just get got.
Never even had a chance. Brainerd never even knew they were there.
I think Ted Levine gets pummeled with the bowling ball, and Clancy Brown is enemies with the golf ball. The bowling ball is coming down from the sky, and Ted Levine's character looks up, and it domes this guy. And it hits him so hard, he does a spin move.
Pummeled.
And then falls to the ground. I'm like, these guys are hella concussed.
They're getting wrecked. It's a problem. It's an issue.
And the real issue walking away from the scene is this bowling ball and golf ball continue to bounce up and down into the atmosphere throughout this entire movie. Brainerd has no regard. He's like, all right, well, I guess these are just bouncing up and down forever now.
He's irresponsible. We've covered this already, but he is a wildly irresponsible human being who is wreaking havoc, not only on his neighborhood now, but the earth. Because that bowling ball is not stopping. I don't think the military can stop what's going on right there.
Brainerd is so overpowered, he somehow can use Flubber to control levitation and make things float.
Yeah, he makes his Ford Thunderbird fly.
Oh, yeah. No, he first tests this on a small object in the lab, which is apparently fixed, except for the broken window that the goons were peeking through.
Which would have got broken anyway by the golf ball. So
right. He has mastered Flubber. He has made it into different matters, different formulas, different appliances, and he now knows how to control, literally remote control, this Flubber. And then has the time, the resources, and the money to create a whole new propeller engine for his Ford Thunderbird, and now he has a flying car.
and he's going to go fly it over to Sarah to impress her. It's pretty sound logic. If you created a flying car and you could say, hey, the reason I missed our wedding was to create a flying vehicle, that might fly. No pun intended.
I think our fiancés would forgive us. Nice. I think our fiancés would forgive us for that.
Yeah, I agree. But he discovers that Wilson is flirting with Sarah. So Wilson's following through on his plans to be Mr. Steer Yo Girl.
Yeah, damn Wilson.
Then we get a weird scene. Brainerd comes home all sad and depressed because he saw Sarah with Wilson. And he goes upstairs. And then Weibo creates this holographic hot chick to follow him upstairs. She calls it Sylvia, makes it like really attractive. And this hologram goes over and tries to kiss him while he's sleeping. In the context of not a Disney family comedy, this is creepy as shit.
It's non-consensual is what it is.
She is infatuated with him.
Just Nick, step back and think about this scene for a minute. We understand that Weibo loves Brainerd, but when you think about it, you're like, what's the end game with what's happening here? Because Weibo is a robot who floats and is projecting a hologram who is not her, but Weibo's just looking at it as a third person, like, oh yeah, like I want to see this hologram kiss this human that I'm in love with. It's like kind of odd.
Again, it's in the context of not this family fun movie, it would be part of a horror thriller film. That this robot is wildly sentient and is in love with the human and is actively sabotaging his relationships.
Weibo and Flubber are alarmingly sentient, and it's concerning.
It should be. But before the kiss can happen, Brainerd shoots awake and he has a new idea for Flubber. Because earlier in the movie, Wilson and Sarah were going to attend a basketball game. So the basketball game is against Medfield, the school where Brainerd's a professor. And gosh, what was it? Do you remember the name of the other?
It says Rutland right here.
And this is the college I think that's going to take them over with the money.
Like Chris McDonald's character, I think, is the dean of Rutland, right?
That makes sense.
And it's one of those things where he comes into Sarah's office and says, oh, you know what? If we join forces, we'll be unstoppable. Like, let me buy you out. Let me have your college. One of those kind of dynamics. And he makes this very one-sided deal like, oh, if your team wins, you can buy me dinner. But if your team loses, you have to spend a weekend in the cabin with me. And you're like, okay, well, that's just a win-win for you. Nothing for Sarah.
That's the scenario that pops up at your sexual harassment training at work. Like a guy approaching a woman with that deal. It's like, I would report that to HR because that was an inappropriate comment.
Is this considered sexual harassment?
Yes.
So Brainerd's big idea is to use Flubber on the quote-unquote basketball players that Medfield has, which is comprised of probably the most unathletic-looking nerds you've ever seen.
It's shocking. They looked like high schoolers.
Yeah, they just look like a bunch of AV club nerds. And meanwhile, the Rutland team is full of actual athletes who look like they can play basketball.
They look like a Division I, probably best school in the Big 12 kind of team. Like this team can run.
I'll tell you what, the uniforms didn't say that. Those are some sorry ass Disney Channel original movie uniforms. They were like just blank,
just a red tank top,
blank red tank tops versus blank powder blue tank tops. I was like, okay,
$80 million budget. College. You couldn't even get the names printed on them. I don't even think they had numbers on the back.
Definitely no names and no team name. It's weird. It's like this is private schools, but they're not Ivy League. They do establish that in the beginning. And I don't really know where this is supposed to take place. I guess you would assume like in Boston or New York or something over there. But yeah, it's not really specified. Before this, Brainerd does go into an empty gym to test out the effects of Flubber on shoes and the basketball. And it's just bodily injury mayhem in there.
You can't control the Flubber.
This is the question I have. So Flubber obviously makes you bounce high and it has crazy energetic qualities to it, but your body can't sustain that. Like if you gave someone web shooters for Spider-Man, they would rip their sockets out trying to sling across New York City. Spider-Man is strong. He's physically strong. So his joints and muscles can withstand so much momentum and
back
jerking
to Spider-Man,
around.
James. Back to Spider-Man.
Dude, fucking, I didn't even...
Give Spider-Man some flubber. See what happens. Unstoppable.
Dude, he'd be booling out of control.
Crossover. Needs to happen. I don't
No,
understand.
it'd be like Spider-Man 3, where like he fights Black Goo, Venom, except this time he fights Flubber, Green Goo. Dude, it'd be fucking overpowered. Do it. Your move, Hollywood.
For the second half, he puts the flubber onto the shoes. But actually, first we get the coach giving the pep talk before the game, and this guy is honestly one of my favorite character actors of all time. This is Sam Lloyd. You'd mostly know him if you were a fan of the show Scrubs, which is one of my all-time favorite TV shows. He is Ted. First off, rest in peace. He also is a singer. He had a little band called The Blanks. They do a rendition of Hey Ya that we'll play at my wedding. My little homage to Sam Lloyd. So Sam Lloyd is the coach. He plays basically the same character as Ted in Scrubs, if you've seen the show. Very sad sack. Just, oh, come on, guys. We can do it. Sure,
big pushover.
Yeah, sure, they're more talented and better coached and bigger and stronger, but we can do it. They can't. The first half goes, I don't think they score a bucket in the first half.
Brainerd puts these like thumbtacks on the bottom of the shoes that have flubber attached to them, but also have spray paint on them that will wear off in 30 minutes. So halfway through the game, they just start bouncing out of control.
Time activated.
Brainerd was definitely going for just torn ACLs across the board. Like we established, these guys are not athletes. I don't know how these guys made the basketball team. They are stereotypical, quote unquote, geeks, nerds, and dorks, according to Hollywood standards. And they are out there playing a basketball game against at least a D2 basketball team. You give these guys bouncy shoes, and they go flying up in the air and land on their knees. They're going for injuries.
Everyone's loving it. The kids who have the flubber shoes should be frightened. They should be crying.
Everyone should be questioning what is happening, but all the guys with flubber on their feet,
weeping.
I'd be in the corner crying. There's even a moment with the opposite team coach, the Rutland team coach. He goes up to the ref and he's like, "Hey, are you blind? They're doing something illegal out there." And the ref, who is very New York, says, "There's nowhere in the rule book about players jumping too high. Now sit down." I'm like, is this in the Bronx all of a sudden? Because this guy's hella New York. But the coach asked a very logical question, like, yo, this is not normal. What's happening? Like, nobody's like...
Everyone should be freaking out. These kids are jumping like 30 feet in the air.
It's like NBA Street, like during a game breaker.
I hate when something happens like the flubber shoes, and all of a sudden the kids just understand this newfound ability. They're like, yeah, they're flying at the rim. They're dunking. There's a couple obvious goaltends.
That last one was definitely that was definitely goaltending.
Not in this ref's gym. This ref is here for a good time.
I think this ref had money on Medfield. Maybe he was in cahoots with Brainerd. Maybe there's a whole side plot, Breaking Bad side plot about shady money laundering going on with betting on private college basketball games.
Brainerd should have used the opportunity to put some money on it.
I hope he did. But back at Brainerd's home, there's some crazy stuff going on, Nick. Weibo unleashes Flubber for no reason from the case and allows Flubber to dance around the house.
Cage and he's been doing just fine.
Gotta get down. Flubber's got it all. There's a whole dance number. Now, like I pointed out in the beginning, finally, we're getting the Flubber Mambo.
Flubber Mamba.
This is the goddamn Flubber Mambo wine mixer we got going on. Popping off.
All of the robots, all of the wacky invention robots are flying around. One of them puts like the fruit bowl on their head and is doing like the shake. It's mayhem.
So this is what I remembered from Flubber. I thought Flubber were a bunch of jelly people. I thought it was jelly people. They're only little tiny people for this sequence.
Yes.
Which I don't know the point of.
CGI just having fun.
It was a CGI flex by Disney.
There's no other reason for it. It's just some physical comedy, some CGI. It looked good.
After the basketball game, Brainerd's attempt to win back Sarah backfires because he wanted to show how Flubber can work, and Flubber helped the unathletic nerds win the game. But she just kind of gives him a real backhanded, you're remarkable comment. And it's like, oh, that was on paper a compliment, but the tone was so whoopsh. And Brainerd, who doesn't understand social cues, he even gets it. He's like, oh, I don't think that went well.
Vicious.
Upon returning home, Weibo does secretly record Brainerd talking about his emotional baggage and how he says his absent-mindedness is, he's not absent-minded because he's inconsiderate,
Because he's
but
selfish.
or because he's selfish. It's really all of his dopamine and neurons. And essentially he says it's all because he's in love with Sarah and his mind goes to mush when he thinks of her.
That's such bullshit. You're blaming Sarah. Like, dude, this is you, man. If you loved her, that's all you would think about. It's like, oh, I love Sarah so much that I just want to make more wacky inventions and forget about things. It's like, what? What are you talking about, Brainerd?
Again, I have no sympathy for Professor Brainerd and his decision making, because you can say it's somebody else's fault all you want, but at the end of the day, it's yours.
It's on you, buddy.
Dog.
It's on you.
Or the doghouse.
So Weibo, feeling guilty about basically sabotaging his entire relationship with Sarah. Weibo, for some reason, I always thought like, oh, Weibo has to stay in the house. No, Weibo goes out of the house, goes miles across whatever city they're in, knows where Sarah is, goes to Sarah's house, shows Sarah that speech he gave about I love her so much that I can't, this is why I'm forgetful, basically gaslighting Sarah. Sarah just sees it and just does a complete 180. Like, aw.
Instantaneously forgiven. Everything's all good.
And now she'll actually listen to Brainerd about Flubber and the abilities. They're flying in the car around, and Brainerd talking about, oh, Flubber and energy. And Sarah's like, no, flying car. You made a car fly. Like, this is it. This is the money that we can make.
A super bouncy ball. You literally making cars fly on basically nothing. There's no emissions. We're not digging into the earth. You won. This is it. This is renewable energy. I don't know what Flubber runs on, but apparently he doesn't run out. So once you make Flubber, you have energy. So just sell that.
Well, I always thought Flubber was like in the engine of the car, making it go. No, Flubber's back at the house. I don't know what's in this vehicle.
No, Flubber's in the vehicle. There's some Flubber in there. That engine has
some Flubber.
It's been flubbed, is what they call it in the gearhead
It's got a
world.
Flubby engine.
It's like, yo, what'd you do to your car? It's like, oh, just threw a supercharger on it. It's like, oh, nice. Not to brag, I just got mine flubbed.
Yeah, that's what they all say. That's what all the forums have told me. While they're gone, Chester, the big baddie, the rich guy, finds out about Flubber's existence. He saw the car flying earlier too. Did not seem freaked out. He was just like, okay, Brainerd's got something. So he has his goons.
Everyone accepts these like fantastical things that are happening in this movie way too easily. People jumping up 40 feet in the sky during a basketball game out of nowhere. That's fine. Chester looks out the side of his window. Is like, what kind of car does Brainerd have? Huh, that'd be funny if that was him. I think that's him flying his car. It's like, dude, you should be freaking out.
First thought, UFO. That'd be my first thought.
Get into the bunker.
Not, hey, this Brainerd guy, you don't know really about Flubber yet at this point.
Yeah, his only experience is the goons' eyewitness accounts.
Wildly concussed goons saying that there's this magical...
who he suspects are drinking on the job. He does point that out. He says, were you drinking?
Yeah.
And then they even say like, no, I had 2 beers at dinner and I had a glass of wine. It's like these guys are being held accountable by Chester.
Better be getting paid good.
Chester's probably their sponsor.
Has to be.
Yeah.
So when he finds out about Flubber's existence, Chester does, he tries to convince Brainerd and Sarah to sell it to him. They refuse. And so he goes and sends his goons again to go to the house and steal Flubber.
Mm-hmm.
So they're going through the house, and the only person home is Weibo, who attempts to fend off the henchmen, doing a pretty good job, except for Wesson picks up a baseball bat and goes yabo on her, squares her up, and sends her flying.
Now, I did remember this. I did remember that Weibo dies. It was sad. Brainerd and Sarah, they're just like, let's fly to Detroit. We're going to go fly to the Ford Motor Company and go sell this. And I was like, well, this is so weird. I totally forgot they just
did not remember
flew
this.
To the Ford corporate headquarters and said, flying car, you in? So they just shark tanked the big head honcho of Ford And the Ford guy was like, cool. So again, this is another instantaneous fix to a big problem in the movie. Going back to Sarah instantly forgiving Brainerd for all of his tomfoolery and leaving her at the altar 3 times. She's just like, oh, I saw this one video the Weibo showed me. I'm in love with you. And for the financial problem, the debt that this private school is in, they're like, going to Ford, go Shark Tank Ford immediately on their way back to the house that is a victim of a B&E by Smith & Wesson. They're just like, I'd never seen so many zeros on a check. You're like, oh, okay, cool. Problem solved.
Money has been transacted.
There's only 1 to 2 lingering problems at this point. It's what is Chester going to do, and what's the romantic antagonist D-bag Wilson Croft going to do? How are they going to wrap up those stories?
At this point in the game, we're like an hour into the movie, and it's an hour and a half. So you're like, we got 30 minutes left.
So they come in to find Weibo dying. She's not talking. She's showing very minimal signs of life. This is probably the most emotional scene in the movie. I didn't cry, but I got very sad when Weibo was going.
This is where you realize this is Brainerd's best friend, and like the only person that Brainerd's ever connected with.
Yeah, it was a little concerning that this was the most emotional point in the story because this is a robot and he has a human being that he's in love with named Sarah, who he has shared no emotional chemistry on screen with the audience so far with Brainerd. So Weibo dies. She does leave a code name for him, basically her last words. Brainerd discovers that Weibo had a downloaded backup data of herself onto his computer, as well as a video recording of her hologram basically professing her love to him, which was a little awkward in front of Sarah. In front of Sarah, it was a little awkward. Sarah is just a pushover, dude.
I'd be like, I'm kind of glad that thing's gone.
Yeah, Sarah's just like, okay, I'm complacent with everything that happens in my life with men.
Yeah.
And the robots they're in love with. Brainerd and Sarah end up going to Chester's house because they know it was him.
Yeah, they just they're like, oh, only. Well, there's only a handful of people who know about Flubber. Earlier, right, he said, sell it to me or else, and they refused. And so this is kind of we know this is the ramifications for turning him down. And while they're there, they discover that Wilson is also there, and he's just partnered up with Chester for basically no good reason other than they just had to make the 2 baddies be in cahoots with each other.
Yeah, so this was interesting to me. So they go to Chester's house, and they openly admit, they say, oh, have you been to your house recently? Oh, Flubber's gone? Yeah, we stole it. Well, okay, call the cops.
Do you not have cameras up, Brainerd?
Dude, Weibo's got cameras. She's recording the whole thing with his love speech. Yeah, you're wondering, like, okay, what's the end game, Chester? It feels weird that, like, your whole main driving point of why you're bad is to get your kid to get straight A's in this college because he wanted to put him into Harvard Business Law School or something.
And then it's just a crime of opportunity when he finds out about Flubber.
Yeah, so it's weird motivation. And then we do the whole spinning chair. Wilson Croft is there. He's like, haha, I'm in cahoots with Chester this whole time, son of a bitch. I'm not just the B story villain. I'm the main story villain, which was odd.
Haha.
They just kind of threw that in there last minute.
It was really unnecessary.
Well, Brainerd and Sarah have a plan. Dude, this guy has been so adaptive to the elements and qualities and abilities of Flubber. This guy's got a plan. He's coming in flubbed up. He's about to flub this final battle.
So he tells him, hey, in exchange for Flubber and forgive the debt for the school, so I'm going to save the school and I'll sell you the Flubber technology, but you have to basically keep me on staff to train him and study him and use this technology. Basically, I'm the only one who knows how to
train him.
I don't know quite how to say it.
Well, no, it's fine. No, it just goes back to why is it so sentient?
So he takes it out of the case and he holds it, and then his flying car outside flashes his high beams, and we remember when he took the picture with the flash, yeah, that's what made Flubber freak out. So now Flubber sees the flash and just loses it, unleashes pure hell inside of Chester's house. And it starts this, not even a battle. It's an unwinnable war these guys are fighting against Flubber. Because Flubber is just all over the place. There's so much physical comedy.
Flubber is life.
There's so much physical comedy of just like people getting slapped up and down by this green goo ball.
Sarah and Brainerd rub their hands and
Flubber goo.
They said it was like a separating agent so that they can handle Flubber, but I'm pretty sure it was Flubber because Sarah starts punching, I think it's Clancy Brown, or maybe it's Ted Levine. It's one of the guys. And she's just like, like a speed bag.
Like a hanging bag, yeah. It's just, bah, 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 bah.
It's like super fast-forwarded footage. Of just it's like really hokey looking.
In the end, Flubber flies into Wilson's mouth, and then Wilson just like falls down to the ground. And I go, is Wilson dead? You can't just ingest Flubber like that and live.
So
I think it'll just rip you apart from the inside.
If this was an R-rated drama thriller, fucked up movie, and Flubber behaved how it does, how it was established in the beginning, Wilson Croft would be hella dead. And here's why. Because Flubber...
Well, you never see Flubber exit his body either.
No, you do. He comes out the asshole.
Mommy.
Remember?
Yeah,
that's like
dead.
the big... Yeah, that's like the big
That's
gag
true,
there.
yeah.
He explodes out the asshole, puts a hole in the pants. Very slapsticky. But if you think about it, they establish in the beginning, hey, Flubber, every time he hits a surface, the kinetic energy increases.
He's bouncing around in your body.
Theoretically, there's no stopping it, so it didn't really make any sense why Brainerd was able to stop it with a catcher's mitt. But I'll just let that slide because it's a Disney family comedy movie. But as soon as it went into Wilson Croft's mouth, I was like, okay, it's bouncing on internal organs and it should be melting him from the inside. If this was realistic and they stuck to the boundaries of what Flubber is, Wilson Croft essentially would be Black Bolt in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Spoilers.
Ripped apart.
A very graphic death. If this was realistic, Croft is hella dead. In like the most disturbing way.
Think about the first scene with Smith and Wesson. That bowling ball would have crushed his skull. It would have just caved him in.
So can Flubber, is it like the Black Panther suit where no matter what it hits, it just like can absorb all the energy and the impact?
No, because these guys have massive bruises on their heads. Like they clearly got hit.
They do have injuries. So this final battle, they defeat all the bad guys. They retrieve Flubber, they get him back.
They raise the money for the college. They have their successful wedding, along with
but
Flubber and
he's
the daughter
he's
of
still
Weebo.
not there at the wedding. He's on a video call. So the
with Weebo's daughter.
So it's like a Groot situation. Like Groot dies in Guardians of the Galaxy, and Baby Groot is
Groot.
It's not the same Groot. It's the son of the original Groot. So we're getting Grooted again. Weebo. Flubber inspired Guardians all of a sudden. And Weebet is the new floating robot. She's painted red. But fucking Brainerd's still not at his own wedding. He is on a video call because the priest is like, you may now kiss the screen. And it's revealed Weebet has Brainerd on a video call from his basement lab.
Where he blows up the house again.
Well, the film ends with the family heading to Hawaii in the Thunderbird. They're flying at an altitude of 30,000 feet. And going back to our episode of Stealth, where Jessica Biel's character ejected at 30,000 feet, we're talking about negative...
It's pass out territory.
I believe it's negative 45 degrees. And these guys are just chilling in a convertible.
And wildly thin air.
That's hypothermia. Weebet, Sarah, Philip Brainerd, and Flubber. They go to Hawaii. That's plot talk for you. So let's get into some nitpicks. Nitpicks.
Here's my first question about the property of Flubber. Is Flubber always a sentient thing? Because when he turns it into the gel and into the spray, is that like Flubber's piss? Is that like just... or is that like part of the sentient Flubber that he has turned now into a spray that he could put onto bowling balls and shoes and turn into hand cream? Like, how does he separate the usefulness of the Flubber application and the sentient blob that is Flubber? I don't get that.
I don't want to get too scientific about it, but maybe the spray and the cream is kind of like stem cells of Flubber, like a medical asset, like stem cells to humans. Not to get
We
political.
can come up with theories. All I'm saying is, like, it's never like that part is just never explained in any way, shape, or form. They're just like, here's Flubber, and then we use part of Flubber to create all these useful applications. I'm like, are you like taking parts of? Also, Flubber at one point during the Flubber Mambo just like multiplies 50 times, and there's 50 little Flubbers, and they're all the same size as the original Flubber. So I'm like, can this thing just self-replicate? This thing can take over the world. This is a dangerous thing.
It's like a virus.
And it's mischievous. It's mischievous. It has no regard for rules. Its sentience is frightening.
It has so much ambition for tomfoolery. It is scary.
Frightening.
It is not okay.
I don't like it.
We need an explanation of the sentient nature of Flubber, but we also need an explanation of its scientific properties, because they establish that the kinetic energy increases every time it smacks a surface, but they don't explain how it can float. And this is going back to the butt scene. The Flubber just floating in the hallway behind this lady, mimicking the butt cheek up and down. So Flubber can float and levitate? Need an explanation. Don't have it.
You're looking at me like I'm coming with an answer. And it just makes a flying car.
Yeah. Last of all, it's just like the artistic brain that it has. It can draw the Mona Lisa. It does this whole dance number with the Flubber Mambo, iconic. What is its motive? What does it get out of that? Where did it learn that? I don't know. Going back to the absent-minded professor, Flubber was just an object that the professor made up. It's an item. It's an object in the movie. And I'm pretty sure that's all it is. That's the extent of Flubber in the original movie. In this movie, it's a whole character.
It didn't need to have... I'm thinking about it. It didn't need to be sentient for the movie to work.
I really think they were just trying to up the ante of like, hey, let's take this movie and remake it, but we're going to go up to 11 on this part of the movie and make it just wacky, make it goofy, make it for the kids.
Fair.
That segues into my next nitpick, which is the science fiction movie aspect. How much is science and how much is fiction? So I mentioned Bill Nye as the science consultant on this movie, but it seems like a lot of it defies the laws of physics.
Well, Bill Nye is a mechanical engineer. He's not a chemist. He doesn't understand these things. You should have got like Neil deGrasse Tyson or something, who has a little more understanding of like wide medical fields. Bill Nye, fine, but he's just like a normal mechanical engineer who was good on TV. I don't know. If that's your like, this is our science person, it's like, that's pretty weak, guys.
Don't ever get a celebrity version of the profession you're trying to get for a professional.
I don't want Dr. Phil as like the psychiatrist expert. Like, no, get a real guy.
On A Beautiful Mind. You get a professional. You don't get a celebrity professional.
Or you end up with Flubber.
Yeah, it seemed like maybe Bill Nye contributed scientific buzzwords, and that was the extent of his contribution. Bill Nye's great, but it seemed like it was way more fiction than science.
I could take or leave Bill Nye.
Fair enough. So I see you have another nitpick here.
Yeah, if they're trying to do a get money for the school, like we needed an invention for profit, it seems like Brainerd has a lot of those. Specifically, Weibo.
A floating AI assistant.
This is your profit-making machine. Why are you obsessed with Flubber? And what are you going to be obsessed with next? This is not a man who stops at one thing. He's going to get another obsession. He's going to cause more mayhem. He's a menace to society.
He's pretty much a supervillain. He will be the next Doctor Doom or Kang the Conqueror at this point.
He will achieve immortality. Mark my words.
He will be inevitable. My nitpick is the emotionality. Like I said, the most emotional scene was when Weibo died, which I think is a problem. Brainerd has no remorse over missing multiple weddings with Sarah. Sarah is just a complete pushover when it comes to her own self-respect regarding her love life, her professional life. She's just a complete pushover. They might be trying to tug at some heartstrings here with Weibo dying, but that was it. That was the only emotional scene I got out of this slapsticky, gag-filled movie. My last nitpick is Sam is going to need therapy. Now, you're probably asking, who the hell's Sam? Now, Sam is this neighbor kid that has witnessed many horrifying things.
This was a funny overarching thing happening in the film.
Caused by Brainerd. The first one is, I think Flubber flies through the window and maybe scares Sam.
Yeah, he thinks there's monsters outside, and his dad's saying, there's nothing out there that's going to hurt you. And then Flubber comes flying through, causing problems.
During the goon pummel scene where they're just getting smacked by the golf ball and the bowling ball, Brainerd sprays spray out the window, and they bounce up into the tree outside of Sam's house, outside of his window. He's like, holy shit, there's grown men outside my window. This is frightening.
It's a problem.
And the next thing is when Brainerd brings his flying car out and crashes into the tree. Sam again sees Philip Brainerd.
Freaks out.
Again, he runs out of his room screaming down the hallway.
The only human being who is reacting properly.
And then the movie ends with Brainerd and Sarah Flubber, we bet, flying in their convertible at 30,000 feet. And who's in the fucking airplane? And the dad says, oh, you can open your window. There's no monsters out there. We're at cruising altitude. Don't worry about it. Opens the window. Fuck it. His neighbor in a flying convertible is out there. This kid is going to need so much therapy. It's not even funny.
Massive amounts of therapy.
He's going to say, I live in an insane society where no one believes me, and I'm going to go crazy, and I'm going to become the Joker because of how much trauma I'm experiencing as a kid.
Flubber 2, Sam's demise.
All right. Well, talk about this movie. It really took a lot of breaks from the plot to entertain us with just pure physical slapstick comedy.
When he first creates Flubber, has a bunch of these little scenes where he's juggling Flubber and he's bouncing around and he's dancing. Just Robin Williams stuff, you know?
He's doing a scene where they're filming this with Weibo is a puppet. It's a practical puppet in the movie. There are probably some CGI moments with Weibo, but essentially Robin Williams is on set by himself working his magic.
Being Robin.
He's going to work. This is also 1997, but like we discussed, CGI holds up.
It does. It looked really good.
I was really impressed.
I was ready to be disappointed by the CGI, and I was not.
I mean, after watching Hulk and Spawn, I thought, okay, there's no way Flubber holds up, but it did. So good on you, Flubs.
Flubber did great.
Speaking of the 90s, if I were a producer in the 90s and I were trying to sell this movie and get it off the ground, I would say, hey, let's use today's CGI technology to reimagine a Disney classic so we can finally make little green jelly people do a dance number. What do you say?
I'm so into that.
How would you sell this to me?
I'd say it's the Nutty Professor with little green blobs. Shenanigans.
So much serious bodily harm, but everyone's just unfazed and it's a good time. All right, Nick. Well, I think we need to enter our final review here.
Final review.
Final review. Fight.
To get into a quick volley of what the other guys are saying, why don't you hit me with the tomato meter?
Critics on Rotten Tomatoes have this at 23%.
Meanwhile, the people have it at 33% for Rotten Tomatoes.
That's low on both accounts, especially for the people. This is a family movie made for the people.
This is for the people, and I'm shocked that they responded like that. How dare you, people?
On the other hand, Metacritic, the critics there have this at a 37 or a 3.7, if we go by the 10-point scale there.
Ouch. And meanwhile, the fans are not as forgiving with a 5.3.
Much better than those Rotten Tomatoes people.
What's going on, fans?
Bitches. And IMDb, pretty much our wild card there, has it as a 5.3. So same as the Metacritic people. Now's the time for us to go ahead and give our thoughts on this. I think it's your turn to go first. So I'd love for you to give me your laughable log line and give me your popcorn points and give me your final thoughts on this.
Hell yeah. My laughable log line for 1997's Flubber is: a college professor with severe memory problems accidentally invents a sentient green blubber that defies the laws of physics and is the get-rich-quick solution to saving a financially failing private college. 6.3 popcorn points. This is a not flop for me, buddy. Not flop for me. And I'll tell you why.
Wow.
I mean, it's a silly movie. It's a family movie. It's a comedy. I really don't think it deserved to just critically bomb so bad. I can't say enough how much I'm shocked of the ratings, especially from the fan side of things. Apparently people just dragged this movie through the flub. It's pretty much just a display of slapstick comedy, and it's straight away from the main plot so often, like we discussed. Like there's so many scenes just filled with physical comedic gags that they're just not even concerned with the plot at all. And that really kind of rings true with the shoehorned in story beats and the dialogue and just kind of like explaining to the audience what's happening, such as Chris McDonald saying, "It's me. Here's who I am. I'm corrupt. I'm petty. And I'm Mr. Steal Your Girl." So they're pretty much force feeding you information that Chris McDonald is bad and Robin Williams is good, even though he doesn't display himself as a good person. Again, it's a childhood movie for me. I love Robin Williams. I think he did really well in this movie. It's nostalgic for me. But this rewatch really just showcased the outlandish plot. A lot of things were just set up as problems and then got a solution very quickly. Like Sarah being okay with Brainerd's irrational and inconsiderate decisions that he makes throughout this movie, or the get rich quick scheme of just selling the idea to Flubber to a motor car company. Like, cool, money problem solved, love story problem solved, everything solved. They just kind of forced all these story beats to happen with very little emotion when it was really needed in certain scenes.
You definitely could have dove a little farther into Brainerd's being like a lonely genius, right? Like he's frustrated with himself because he's so scatterbrained.
You know, I rate this lower than a couple of movies I've rated during our podcast stretch here, but I would definitely rewatch over those movies, such as Escape from New York or the original Mad Max, The Fifth Element. It's because it's a simple and fun movie. Robin Williams, I can't really say enough how well he does and what a performer he is. I mean, God rest his soul, but this podcast is pro Robin Williams, and I can say that for a fact.
Wildly pro Robin.
Yeah, so I would definitely rewatch this over other movies I've rated higher, just because it's like a mindless movie. But ultimately, it gets dinked for being a remake. It's not an original idea. There's a lot of forced dialogue, and it just kind of seems like a cash grab from Disney.
It worked.
But again, Robin Williams' performance will never be underappreciated by me.
I love it. My laughable logline.
Hit me.
A maybe autistic mad scientist creates a goo and then woos his fiance who has terrible judgment in men and saves his school by activating his criminal green goo. 6.5.
Okay.
I like this.
I was
like
right.
this. I'm
not to step on your toes.
Yeah.
What does that mean, Nick?
This is not a flop.
This is our first flop that's not a flop. It did not deserve the flop. Flop busted. Thank you. You can sit down.
'Tis not a flop. Yeah, this is honestly just, it's a fun movie. It is what it is. You alluded to it, what you were saying, but Robin Williams, great comedic actor, great just actor in general. There was no part of his performance where you think that was bad. He's so good at his craft. Everything he does is great and genuine. The plot was... It gets hard to tell what the main plot was. Is the plot harnessing Flubber? Is the plot winning back Sarah? Is the plot saving the school? Is the plot taking down Wilson? You don't quite know what the plot is, but you learn pretty early in the movie that it's not about the plot. It's about this Flubber. And there's a lot of questions that go unanswered, but that's not really why I watch the movie. I mean, I'll be honest with myself and the listeners. I usually try to be very not swayed by personal bias or nostalgia and try to really rate a movie on its own merits. And that doesn't reflect my personal thoughts or rewatchability. But this one, I'll admit it. This falls into Nick just enjoyed this movie. He enjoys Robin Williams' performances. He likes the silliness aspect. It is what it is. It's a kid's movie. that's a lot of fun to watch and has silly slapstick humor and decent performances and really good CGI. I just was never taken out of the movie by the CGI like I was expecting to. Good film. I'd watch it. If you haven't watched it in a long time, watch it again. You'll find yourself smiling and enjoying it.
I love that.
And I don't know what these critics and people are thinking on these other platforms.
Yeah, that seemed like way too harsh.
I don't know what you wanted out of this movie. There's a reason that it grossed $178 million, and it's not by being a 33% film. I don't know. I don't know. Shit like this bothers me.
Yeah, I mean, for what you don't make up for in plot and storytelling, you could definitely make up for in entertainment value, comedic performance, and it's rare that we say a movie's good because CGI is good, but CGI was good. So what more can you ask for?
All right, James.
All right, well, that is our review. We need a sequel to what Flubber is up to in Hawaii. Flop busted. You can call off LeBron James, tell him to go home because there is no flop to be had here.
Boom, roasted.
Get wrecked, dog. This is not a flop according to the Just Play It standards. We are heading gone, and we are leading into our season finale next week.
Ooh, got any hints?
Please tune in next week while we review our very first recent movie. This is a movie that came out last year, 2022.
I'm shocked that we're doing this.
Can you tickle the audience with what we are reviewing next week?
It is a movie where the main character plays himself.
And you won't know what it is until you tune in next week. You follow us on Instagram at Just Play It Podcast. You follow us on Twitter at Just Play It Pod. And we have a YouTube channel. I think it's just at Just Play It Podcast. I think it's Just Play It Pod.
Just Play It Podcast.
Please follow us on YouTube. We are on YouTube and we have a channel and it's definitely real. And it is at Just Play It Podcast. Just like our Instagram.
We're everywhere, guys. Follow us.
Please follow us. Please enjoy. Please listen. Please support us. And we will keep supplying you with the funnies and the information on these old, obscure movies.
Well, James, time to sign it off.
Thank you very much, Nick. I salute you.
Go flub yourself.
You can shut the flub up now.
Bye, everybody.